Hey everybody, welcome to episode 30 of the AskDAP show, where we answer your Volkswagen and Audi questions. On this episode, we talk about stripped oil pans, is a 2.5 Rabbit a good reliable vehicle, retrofitting tire pressure sensors, and vacuum leaks on a 2.5 engine.
Larry via email says, "Hi Paul, thank you for your forum about common problems with the 2.5 liter engine on VW Vortex. Our 2009 Jetta has the symptoms you listed for the PCV diaphragm being torn. The fault code is P2187 system tooling. Although the dealer replaced the valve cover / PCV, the oscillating idle and P2187 came back the next day. I tried your trick of removing the oil fill cap to check for vacuum in the crankcase. There is a significant vacuum, a strong air sucking sound, and my engine runs much rougher with the cap removed. My question is, what level of vacuum inside the engine is considered normal?"
Okay, so Larry, if for anybody who's not familiar with what Larry is referring to, we put out a post on the forums that talks about common problems on 2.5s. Specifically, the one he's referring to is the valve cover or the PCV valve, which is built into the valve cover on the 2.5, being bad, causing a vacuum leak, which causes that system to lean fault. So if that has been taken care of and you know that that's a known good valve cover and it's new, the next step you would go to would be looking into a vacuum leak. Now, to ask how much vacuum an engine should have, usually most engines are going to run around 21 inches of vacuum, roughly, and that's going to vary, obviously, depending. That's at idle. As the RPMs raise, vacuum starts to drop. So what you're looking for is probably a vacuum leak. It could be something else related to other issues. System to lean faults can be anything from oxygen sensors, mass airflow sensors, sometimes maybe, and I think the later 2.5 that's in your car doesn't have a mass airflow sensor. It actually uses the MAP sensor, so could possibly be related to that. Or maybe you have an actual vacuum leak. So you're going to have to kind of dive further into it. But if your car is at the dealer, that's a great step. They should be able to help you diagnose that issue if they've already gone through the steps of replacing the valve cover. You know, that would be your next step.
Matt Norton via email says, "I'm looking at a 2008 VW Rabbit 2-door. It has 87,000 miles on it and has the 2.5 non-turbo and a 5-speed behind it. The guy selling it wants $6,800 for it. I've never drove a VW before, so when I test drove it, it felt very odd to me. The clutch started to grab on the top half of its stroke, but had no slip even under hard acceleration. Everything worked as it should and had no issues with it. My main question is, would this be a good buy?"
Okay, so Matt, the 2.5 Rabbit manual, in terms of reliability, that's a really good vehicle for reliability. 2.5s, well, they had a few little issues, and as we mentioned earlier, we put together a common problems article talking about 2.5 common problems, but the only really prevalent issues with 2.5s are secondary air related, which is an emission system. We actually did a video talking about what secondary air is and what its function is, but most of those are not going to be things that are going to leave you stranded under any circumstance. They're just going to cause a check engine light, of which you would have to eventually repair to pass inspection. So is that a good buy? I would say yes. Always 2.5 is a pretty solid, reliable vehicle. The fact it's a manual makes it also reliable too, because automatics have a lot more moving parts, which by tendency just makes them less reliable. The one concern I have is you said the clutch is grabbing high. Now, because maybe this is your first VW or you're new to the brand, or maybe you're new to that model, you may perceive it as high, or it may actually be high. So you may want to look into that to determine if my answer is correct based on that particular vehicle. Any clutch grabbing high is generally a sign that the clutch is wearing. As clutches wear, the pedal will start from grabbing lower and then continue to grab higher and higher until the clutch needs to be replaced. Now, at 87,000 miles, if somebody is either abusive or has a driving style that tends to wear the clutch, you know, they rest their foot on the clutch pedal, or they tend to ride it, you know, when releasing it, or whatever, a million different things. they may have a premature or a clutch worn at 87,000 based on the way they drive. I've personally seen clutches where people last 600 miles on. So, it's possible to wear a clutch quicker than, let's say, maybe you should get 150,000 out of that clutch, but because of the driving style of that person, it is prematurely worn, and maybe that's part of the reason why they're getting close to getting rid of it. The fact you're saying it's not slipping, tough to say. If it isn't slipping, it's probably good, but the fact it's riding high means it's probably more likely to be worn and just something you should look into.
Henry Marshall via email says, just after some advice, my car has recently been leaking oil quite quickly. I was under the car and quickly determined that it was the fault of the sump plug, bolt, or pan. Had it along with my colleague who has its own workshop, and we discovered that the bolt had previously been massively over-tightened to the point that the threads have been damaged. I've been along to buy a new sump pan, 120 pounds. Ouch. But in the meantime, we replaced the crush washer that had also previously been reused several times in the past and wrapped PTFE tape around the bolt. So far, after 48 hours, this has provided a good seal and there's been no leaking oil. Would you recommend I still go ahead and replace the sump and then replace the oil? Does the oil pressure condition sensor require a gasket and sealant also? On a similar note, I can often smell oil inside the car, but unless I'm wrong, I find it hard to believe I'd smell oil from a dripping drain bolt. It seems to happen in low revs when slowing down for stoplights, so it could indicate a problem with blow-by gas leaks and or the turbo. Thanks for your help, and thanks for the fantastic channel and vids.
Okay, so Harry, in regards to oil pan issues, as pretty much since the beginning of Volkswagen Mark IVs, when they had aluminum oil pans, this has kind of been a problem with people over-tightening them and eventually stripping out the drain plug. It even kind of happens over time, sometimes just because of constant use on the aluminum eventually would wear on a high mileage vehicle. But again, most often it would just be from over-tightening. People strip out the threads and then destroy it, and you'll either find like this weird, like big self-tapper that some random Jiffy Lube type place kind of just jams in the hole to stop it from leaking, or something like that. My personal recommendation would be to just replace the pan. I know it is generally going to be an expensive repair, and I know you mentioned 120 pounds, which in the US is roughly around $200. So yeah, that's going to be around the price you're going to pay for a lot of oil pans. Some of the later model cars are a little bit cheaper with the oil pans. Some of the steel ones and even the plastic ones tend to be a little bit less than that. Replacing that is going to be the best bet. Sometimes you can helicoil it, which if you get a good quality helicoil kit, you can probably try to replace it, but a lot of times you'll have to tap it out. Depending on your level of expertise and your ability to make a helicoil, it may or may not seal properly. So, and a lot of times the good helicoil kits are kind of expensive anyway, so you may cause yourself a lot of frustration and additional cost by trying to helicoil it in the first place. So there's that. Replacing the pan is always the best option in that situation. If you need to limp it along, one of those temporary drain plugs might be an okay option for now until you kind of can maybe save up for it. But at some point in the near future, you can expect to have that not work permanently. In regards to the situation where the oil burning smell, you can be pretty certain that your oil burning smell is not going to be from a dripping oil pan. That almost certainly would not be related unless it's dripping quite a bit and while you're driving, and maybe it's blowing back on the exhaust. I've seen stuff like that where you have an oil leak that's bad enough that will actually blow back on the exhaust while you're driving, causing it to have an oil burning smell. If that's not the case, you're probably going to want to look into trying to find an oil leak. Most likely, if you have a blow-by situation, you're probably not going to smell it at idle coming into the cabin just because it's going to be going out of the back of the car instead of coming into the cabin from, let's say, where the intake air duct is for the AC system and stuff like that. So most likely you're looking for an oil leak on the engine that is burning oil. I didn't see what kind of vehicle you have, but you mentioned a turbo. I think you've mentioned some stuff before. I believe you have an FSI engine. They had some vacuum pump leak issues, valve covers, Some of that stuff around there you might want to look at to determine if you have oil leaks coming from those areas. But I believe you're looking for an oil leak coming from the engine bay itself. So I wouldn't immediately assume engine blow-by or anything.
Mark Todoff via email says, I have a 2012 VWCC GT 2.0 TDI UK spec, which comes with an indirect via the ABS sensor TPMS. I have found the system too unreliable despite checking the values and validating them regularly. I recently asked VW if I could have the direct TPMS system retrofitted, to which they said it was not possible. Direct equals sensors in the wheels and the PSI displayed on the dash. As you guys seem to have a fair bit of knowledge on the CC, I wonder if you could comment about the retrofitting direct TPMS. Thanks in advance, Mark.
Okay, so Mark, the CC you were referring to is, since you are in the UK, is a little bit different than the CC that we would get in the US, but obviously the same basic principles are going to apply for answering this question for anybody who has indirect ABS versus direct ABS, as you've called it. Basically, the difference in two different ABS systems is one ABS system actually has a sensor in each wheel that measures the tire pressure. The later versions, which in the US started roughly around 2012 and then became pretty much commonplace in like 2013, 2014, they don't have sensors in the wheels. They use the ABS sensor, which determines the wheel speed to determine if the tire is low. So what you're referring to is the fact that it uses ABS it's not super sensitive and doesn't give you direct tire pressure settings. And you're looking for the older style, which, keep in mind, a lot of the older style actually didn't give live tire pressure data either. Basically, they were activated by centrifugal force and only set a light under either extreme pressure drops or under certain conditions when they were activated by turning. If you're looking to retrofit that, VW would not be able to help you retrofitting. I'm certain that there's probably aftermarket retrofits out there that exist. They're not going to integrate into your car, so that's probably a little bit of a downside. You'll have to have some sort of like display or something that you mount to measure tire pressure. Here's how I kind of view this stuff when it comes to tire pressure settings. And, take it for what it's worth. To you, you may not feel this way, but retrofitting TPMS on a car that already has it just to get pinpoint accuracy, it seems like a waste of money to me. You're spending money to make sure your tire pressures are good, but most of the ABS tire pressure things are going to give you tire pressure if you're looking for a major drop in pressure, which is really all tire pressure systems were intended for originally, was to make sure that if your tire was 8 pounds low on pressure, that you're not going to continue to drive and you address the issue immediately. So I would say probably something that's not worth it, but you should be able to find something aftermarket out there. Thank you for watching episode 30 of the AskDAP show. If you have any questions, comments, or think we missed anything on the question and answer in this show, be sure to leave it in the comments below. If you want a question of yours answered on a show just like this one, shoot us an email, info@shopdap.com. Be sure to put AskDAP in the subject line, ask your question, and we'll be sure to get back to you. Be sure to subscribe and give this video a thumbs up if you like it.